I'm Rebecca, and last week we spoke about food intolerance testing. And one of the things about food intolerance testing, of course, is that eventually you'll get the results. And sometimes people are super excited about that. They're like, I'm finally going to get the answer for why I have the symptoms that I have. However, that excitement may not last very long when you may discover that you're intolerant to many foods. And that's not lots of my patients. Usually there's only 1 or 2 foods that they're intolerant to. But unfortunately for some people, then there can be quite a wide array, and particularly ones that are consumed regularly in the diet. So for some people, especially small children, they might be intolerant to gluten-containing grains, bovine dairy, that's cow-based dairy, and eggs. Now, that's a pretty tough trifecta to deal with, particularly when it comes to baking, bread, just everyday staples, cereal. So I'm just going to give you some tips and tricks today about things that you can do to substitute. So regarding dairy, when people talk about dairy, usually what they're talking about is bovine products, and bovine means derived from cow. So unless it says otherwise on a label, it's usually from a cow. And the test distinguishes between 2 main proteins that are in cow's milk, one called casein and one called whey. So some people are only intolerant to whey, which means they can't have yogurt, milk, ice cream, soft cheeses, but they may tolerate casein, which means they can have more hard cheeses. And yes, that's mostly it with casein. And but there's, of course, now there's a raft of complete substitutes for animal-based dairy altogether. So there's oat milk, a raft of nut milks, including almond, cashew. There's coconut milk, rice milk. And if you are tolerant to sheep and goat's milk, there's plenty of those products on the market as well. I know the Meredith Dairy makes a number of goat and milk, yogurt and cheese products. Now, regarding eggs, so the test that I use it tests egg whites and egg yolks separately. What it's testing for is chicken egg whites and chicken egg yolks because they're the most commonly consumed eggs. However, thankfully, it does also test for duck eggs because some people can't tolerate any chicken eggs, but duck egg is okay. There's nothing different about a duck egg besides that the yolk is slightly bigger than the yolk of a chicken egg. It can be used in baking. It can be eaten just like normal eggs. And you may be tolerant to egg yolks, but not to egg whites, which means you can eat things like custard, I suppose, because they're mostly egg yolk. Now, if you can't tolerate any eggs, there are still things you can do for baking, such as, and when I say for baking, I mean for thickening and setting things. So you could use silken tofu, soaked chia seeds, applesauce. The pectin in the apples helps thicken, and mashed banana. And also in the supermarkets, there is like a thing available called egg replacer that's used, some people use in baking products. And lastly, gluten. So gluten is in wheat, and that means it's also in spelt, because spelt is a derivative of wheat. It's in barley, rye. It's also in products like couscous, semolina, and durum wheat. Gluten-free products and flours include quinoa, chia seed, buckwheat. You can also make flours from legumes. So there's besan flour, which is chickpea flour. There's rice flour, corn flour, also called maize. And tapioca flour also is gluten-free. So there are a bunch of flours available. You can buy them in supermarkets. You can buy them in health food stores. Sometimes they're blended. And if you've got something like a Thermomix, you could even have a go at making them yourself from the various legumes and nuts and seeds, etc. So almond meal is often used as a substitute if the person isn't intolerant to almonds. Now, given that I mostly see children, one of the main things that parents deal with, I mostly see children for food intolerances because I treat a lot of eczema, is that they deal with how am I going to bake, throw a children's party, etc. So there's a great website called kidswithfoodallergies.org, kidswithfoodallergies.org. And that's a community-based website where people put up their favourite recipes for cakes and muffins and, kids' treats, but also a bunch of other things like how to bake family dinners, etc., and whilst you're keeping in mind food intolerances and food allergies. With the test that I use, I also sell it complete with a database of recipes, which is from a company called Victus. This is really useful because what we do is we filter out all those foods that you can't eat, and it only leaves you with a database of recipes that you can eat, and it's a really vast database. So they're just some tips and tricks for dealing with food intolerances and food allergies. I don't want you to be left with that everybody is intolerant to gluten, eggs and dairy. That is definitely not the case. It's more rare than common, but sometimes it does happen. And ultimately, what we're interested in the future is reintroducing those foods. And I'll talk about that next. Thank you.